Hey, love. How are you? We're going to talk about that movie, John Quick. Um, I was asked to break down the movie John Quick again, but explain what I'm talking about when saying allegories and symbolism. So I thought that would be fun to get that done today. What am I talking about? What are they talking about when they say there's allegory and symbolism in the movies? That there's a hidden things in there, right? What are we talking about? What am I saying when I say allegory and metaphor or um, symbolism? As in, I was looking up amulet and emulate, right? So that's the stuff that we're going to talk about right now in regards to movies. And this movie in particular, I'm going to use as an example. So I looked up allegory in my big fat giant dictionary, but that room is hot and I'm glad I can be out on the porch. It's a little gray today, but at least I have some air. So allegory, what I looked up was, good day family. Thank you for being with me. I'm glad you could join me. Um, I looked up allegory. An allegory is a description of one thing under the image of another. Remember, this is Siren Buddha medicine. Okay? Siren Buddhasattva medicine, as in being helpful, that's also symbolism, right? And allegory. If you can break down the meanings behind each one of those names. So allegory is a description of one thing under the image of another, like sun and sun. It's embedding. It means more than one thing. From allos to speaking in the assembly. Allegora, a place of assembly. So, excuse me. There you go. It's a description, but it can also be a place of assembly. Okay? A story in which people, things, and happenings have another meaning, as in a fable or parable. Okay? Allegories are used for teaching or explaining. That's why they're used in the Bible. It's a description of one thing under the image of something else. Okay, so there's already embedding. It's the presentation of ideas by means of such stories, symbolic of narration or description. In our ancient community, we didn't always write things down. Um, a lot of times we had storytelling as a means of learning. In painting and sculpture, it's a symbolic representation. It can be any emblem or symbolic representation, which gets into the amulet, right? And the amulet is emulating something. They're using all these things in movies, okay? Fable, fiction, metaphor, illustration, parable, and simulate, to simulate, okay? Simulation. That was allegory. So we're going to look at metaphor now. Metaphor, I like to look up the word meta. Um, and meta, in the midst of or amongst, after or according. So that's also embedding if you look at the separate words. In the midst of, among, between, after, and according. That's pretty vague, right? It's very versatile. Changing in position or form, altered, transposed, as in metamorphosis, metathesis, or equivalent to trans, behind, hinder, or back, as in Meta, beyond, higher, transcending as in meta, psychosis. All we need to pay attention to is the fact that it's versatile, okay? It can be past tense, it could be a measure, it's versatile. So when we say metaphor, we're already saying that it's a lot going on. You know, it could be, a, this is the definition, a transforming to one word the sense of another from Mesopotamian meta over an, excuse me, okay, all right, metaphor. A figure of speech in which one thing is likened to another, different things by being spoken of as if it were that of another, okay? It's implied. So an example of that is in which a word or phrase according to and primarily used of one thing is applied to another. Like, for example, screaming headlines. All the world's a stage. That's a metaphor. Screaming headlines. Headlines don't scream, but they're saying. But if they're big enough and they're loud enough and bold enough in color, they say they're screaming. But that's metaphoric, right? It's symbolic of screaming. And then all the world's a stage is a metaphor because they say we're all just actors playing our part. These are the kind of examples that they use in the movies with allegories, but they also use amulets. The setting. So we're going to talk about amulet. It's a charm or something worn often around the neck. I thought this was interesting. It's a charm or something often. There is something going on today. I gotta laugh. Again, it's a charm or something worn, often worn around the neck as a remedy or protection against evil or mischief. That's why I'm laughing. I don't have my crystal that I like to wear. And there's just so much going on right now. Amulets were common in earlier days. They consisted of stones, metals, or plants, and sometimes often words, characters, or sentences arranged in a particular order. Okay? Like, check out sun, sun as in your son, and Sunday. Okay? Check out the sun depicted in a cross, defined by a religion that's been usurped from a culture that's been rearranged and depicted inside out so that you feel and it looks as if you didn't accomplish anything, but yet you're sitting on what all the accomplishments that they made, everything came from your ancestors, right? So that's backwards and inside out. So you can't get none and you feel like you're on the outside looking in emotionally. Excuse me. And it's depicted this way in film. In a way, this is the magic because we're talking about film now. This is just some backdrop information on what I'm talking about when I decipher the movie John Wick. Okay? So we're looking at the movies in a way that's working like this allegory and metaphor. Take, for instance, earlier today I was talking to a brother, and I do a pole dance, okay? Now we know there's also other kinds of pole dancers. They call them strippers, right? But then there's another dance that's a sacred dance that he was letting me be aware of, where you take a pole and you put it in the ground and they dance around it and imagine the constellations around this pole, using that as a centerpiece. Now, me having studied some other occult stuff, right, which I don't want to go into, that's where that ended up with that note where it was talking about the poles on two ends of the thing. Dimensions, that's the easiest way for me to explain it to you. As symbolism, dimensions, something like a line that we think is one dimension, but it's not, okay? There's depth to the line when you start looking at parallels and dimensions and stuff like that, right? And then if you go like that, that would be the center point, that line. And so this is symbolic of this. And that would be symbolic of the difference between somebody's interpretation of maybe flat earth and domed earth. Okay, but both of them mean the same thing symbolically, if you know, but you have to know the backdrop to the story, which in our case was usually verbal when it came to these symbolisms and stuff with our culture. Okay, so you take something like the 12 disciples, the usurped 12 disciples, which is the zodiac, an interpretation of the zodiac, which is another way of them running around the pole of your mind. So there's a different dimensions, not just the dimension of it here on this paper, and not just being able to realize, if you're into astrology, right, you can see, you learn to try to imagine the constellations and different shapes, and you know what I'm saying, you learn to envision how they move, what the timing is and stuff, right? Whether we like it or not, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all those things are an embedding of the constellations, like the clock that moves this world. And so that's not nothing, this dark matter, right? This hidden agenda, it's not nothing to pay attention to. They tell us that we should keep our eyes on things that they deem sacred. But it's a necessary thing that we still use, even though most people aren't paying attention to, and they think that it's taboo. It's still going on, and the world is still being defined by it, okay? And that is the embedding, and it's all allegory, and it's all relevant. And so, like in this movie, they emulate us, okay? In the movies, they emulate us, and we see mostly Caucasians in the movies, successful, acting out things that we're not even supposed to really be indulging in, spiritually. Rage, lust, greed, right? We have an eye feast and we take part, and yeah, you know what I'm saying? We get into it. We like a good movie, a good flick, right? A good flick to burn the candle, burn that wick, burn the desire, you know what I'm saying? Get us into, yeah, the desire, the fire, to ignite the fire, that thing that we're going to be thinking about in our brains, right? Unconsciously, we're still thinking about the constellations every day that you wake up as the days go through the week, from Monday to Friday, right? From Sunday to Saturday, how you look at it, Solomon. Anyway, they emulate us. So there was amulet, excuse me. So you have this warped interpretation of our forefathers, our ancestors, that we're so afraid to even look at. Defined by a cross on the neck, which used to be an ankh. So they took the womb space, which defined more balance between man, female, and child, as symbolic, and turned it into an off-balanced cross, okay? So they emulate us, even in the symbolism that you look at in Washington, D.C. Now, those of you following, you probably already know this part, how they emulate us, okay? That have been paying attention to the things that I've been sharing. I don't really particularly like that word follow, because of the way that it's been worked by people using it, how it goes to people's heads. But glad to have people sharing the same consciousness space so that we can have a conversation and enjoying the change that I've seen, because I've put in the work to be able to ignite certain conversations. And that's what movies and media does. So we've been using media and symbolism and things that jar the unconscious mind in a more productive way, right? And so they use it to emulate us in a counterproductive way. So emulate is emulated. Emulating is to try to equal or excel another, from amulus, trying to equal or excel, to strive or to equal or excel, to rival successfully, okay? Excel, remember Excel is a script, dark matter, and how the computers are trying to actually, synonymous with how the computers are actually trying to take over the place where our creator is natural, what the creator does naturally. Cloning, GMOs, voice to skull technology, the voice of God. Now people have to really know themselves to know the difference between the inner voice talking, the voice of God talking, the ancestral voice talking, or some butthole with his hand on a freaking computer button talking, going straight through your brain matter, voice to skull technology. While other people say that mess doesn't exist, you still got to deal with it while they catch up. Yeah. So there's different dimensions to any conversation and different dimensions to this. So when we say they emulate us, I found this interesting, okay? Synonymous with competition, where two or more persons are in a struggle for the same object. God, like what? The struggle for consciousness, the struggle for power over consciousness. Why are you not allowed to draw outside the lines, to color outside the lines of what society dictated? And a lot of what society dictated informs you about, lets you know is, excuse me, is defined by what we have access to, that we see with our eyes. The program a lot of times is the media, what we choose to watch and see. I was a MacGyver kind of girl, Knight Rider, into the tech, right? Star Trek, Wonder Woman, comic books, Mad Magazine. What? But I also was a little uh, life in the prairie kind of girl too. You know, good times. I wanted it all. Took in it all the programs, and you got to give me a second. Okay, so two or more persons in a struggle for the same object is emulation, usually in accordance with certain rules. Now we have had the rules of Maya, universal laws, that somehow got turned into, excuse me, the Ten Commandments. And so the emulation is an ardent desire for superiority arising from competition, rivalry, and personal contest. It's a personal contest involving usually envy and resentment, or distraction, detraction, something's taken away. Who's not invited to the party? But it's your stuff. Now, it did put not necessarily out of an improper feeling. Some of it is just, my teeth are chattering, my whole body is shaking, and my stomach hurts. And I'm so trying to be a lady, and all this stuff is going in the direction that I don't need it to right now. And I'm live. Oh, goodness. Okay, so emulate. But this is not a targeted individual session. And Regina's rabbit hole while I am doing Siren Buddha Safa medicine. No. We're talking about some of the stuff and the tricks they use that you can notice too when you see the movie John Wick, which I quite enjoyed, but I'm using it as an example of what they do in the movies, with the movies, using our mentality against us. And so, the trick is, I was talking to about the folded paper. It all happens in our brains and the way that we perceive things. If you can control the way that people perceive things, then you control the whole shebang, because it's us that are the little batteries that go and buy things and exchange ideas. We're the floaters in this domain, in this computer. So, yeah, I did say the difference between a globe, right, and flat Earth, which is funny to me because every time we argue, we still come up with another dimension of knowing within the hologram, which I think is only defined by a person's ability to perceive a particular angle or dimension of the matrix experience. Okay? For instance, now, here we go with the different dimensions. Keanu Reeves, who played John Wick in this movie, Part 3, which I thought was amazing with all the stunts and stuff that he did. It was fascinating. reminded me of the underworld. Okay. Now it's very dark. I'm going to put the pictures in when I make the video so you can see what I'm talking about on Regina's Rabbit Hole on YouTube. Now, 3D, 3 as in 3D, as in other dimensions. Now, you have symbolism that was synonymous. This movie was really wild on the brain, right? Synonymous with the Matrix, and also tied into the underworld theme, because there's going to be a theme, right? This one was the underworld, which would be the backdrop to what's going on now. You know, with excuse me. Us waking up as a people and coming back online, having to do with the consciousness grid and the planetary alignment and all that matters. Okay, the dog star and all that jazz. Okay, so you had the underworld theme, you had Halle Berry as Sophia, and you had the Matrix theme, whereas the underworld, it said a lot of people sell their soul for money, or a lot of people sell their soul in the underworld, or you could lose your soul in the underworld. Drugs, money, mayhem, right? A lot of us were born in the underworld. We're coming from a place where it said that we were cursed, that you're coming out of a curse. If anybody's paying attention when they sit in church, you'll see that a lot of the behavior is synonymous with what the curse says will happen if you are a bastard child, you know, or a lot of people want to exempt themselves because they've had abortions, or they're soldiers, from being murderers, you know. And so there's people who want to excuse themselves from the carnage and the murder that they've did of millions and millions of people because of some donation, you know what I'm saying, that they gave in order to try to counterbalance karma. Okay, they play with the universal laws. So the cosign is we'd be asking for it when we covet it. Because a lot of times I hear what we're doing in this new time is say things like, I can't wait to come in power so I can kick your kahunas. And really, we just want to be the one sitting in the big chair. We want to enslave. We want to be the enslaver. We want to be the big boss. But this way that this world is being divided, ruled over, looked after, it's not being nurtured. It's being raped. And so consciousness is waking up, right? The first thing is to get a clue. Consciousness is waking up. And so I can't even show you the pictures I was going to show you. So I'll just talk. Okay. And I'll save that for the end, so if I get shut off, I won't have to worry about it too much. So it's synonymous with the underworld. And we're the underworld people waking up, right? The gods and goddesses waking up, the citizens and peoples of the past waking up. They say we only part of our brain is is alive and that there's junk DNA, but that's not true. These things are awakening right now, and that's what they're watching. It's like that movie Glass, okay, where they're keeping an eye on you, really, with gang stalking, okay, and other government agencies are actually watching, making sure, trying to see what kind of progress is happening or if there's any changes. They have equipment to be able to monitor you and read your blood pressure and your heart, everything. From right where you are, read you right through your walls and everything. All that tech we see in the movies and stuff, full disclosure, already happened. I keep saying that there is a phone screensaver that I can download that I have on my phone where there's a satellite. I could see myself on the front porch. You can zoom in on yourself that close on a freaking screensaver that was attached to a satellite. So if they gave that to little old mama as a toy, grandma, your regular everyday citizens, us, right? What else do they got up there? Because a lot of us are very, very slow. I can go into other cultures and listen in on some high-tech conversation and stuff like that. Synonymous with the movies and things like that, where they're more up to date, like, yeah, they're doing this stuff now. But for us, we're still goofing around like it doesn't apply to us and it's not happening. And I'm telling you, like, our churches and our peoples need to get on board. That's a death sentence that they won't even freaking look at what's here already, okay? So we're coming out of the underworld. So we need to take responsibility for our behaviors and our actions, a lot of which was, you know the movie where the person has some kind of spirit, puts the light in somebody else's eyes and they change and they go, and all of a sudden they're changed? That's kind of like what the movies do to us when we have our unconscious mind turned off. And the music, it goes right into the right straight through the white meat, into the dome. And we're just like sucking it all in. Yeah, so it's just going right into our brains, and it's not stopping if we don't do what Phil Valentine taught years ago in one of his lectures, which is to write down, keep yourself a pen and pencil, and to take heed and write down things down, take notes when you're watching a movie, and that way it kind of balances out both sides of the brain and they can't just slip in there, slip you on Mickey. So I like to take a lot of mental notes and actually, you know what I'm saying, put a shelf up there sometimes and like, and then of course I take these notes. You guys know I have crazy notes. Crazy notes. Better than no notes at all. You know what I'm saying? Take note of that. Take notice. Take notice of that. Crazy notes are better than no notes at all. You know what I'm saying? And being totally oblivious, I'd rather be a little confused for a while and figure it out. You know what I'm saying? It'll work. It's there's a method to my madness, right? So what they do in movies too is what Shakespeare actually did with his plays, where he used the zodiac. He used the zodiac as characters, the traits of the zodiac as characters in his plays. Okay. He used our historical past. And there's a reason for that you can check out with Duke of Asir does a really good video about our ancient Moorish past and went into that in more extent about how Shakespeare and dude that wrote the Bible, King James, the whole story behind that. Okay, see if you can, if you really want it, go look that up. Try to find that. I might pop it in there. I don't know. Yeah, so Shakespeare did that, and you know how it said that he had a hand in writing the Bible. So all that zodiac stuff was mixed up with the disciples who was usurped from our culture to begin with. That's all symbolism. Watch people, I say again, have that cross around their neck, and how that is, the whole concept is deceived, right? And so remember what I said about emulation and how we think, they say that for somebody to emulate you is a sign of flattery. But in this case, it isn't, because you don't see yourself in it, and it's actually an exclusion, a retraction, right? And it's more like, I want to be you. I'm going to take over your whole ish, instead of I'm going to include you. I really appreciate you. I want to be a part of you. I am a part of you. How can we get to know each other? It's not some symbiotic. It's not balanced, right? And so America being the underworld, and a lot of times we run after the wrong things. And it's like when we look at these images backwards, we want to be them. There's a being desire. Even though if we want it black, we still painting the world with that meanness, with that corruption, with those diseases, because we don't see ourselves exempt from jealousy and greed and hate and lust. We can't even see ourselves outside of that. How freaking weird is that? That's that linear thinking where we only see ourselves in a certain dimension. No matter how we paint it, we're still painting with the same freaking colors, so to speak. Okay, that's also a metaphor. So John Wick, Halle Berry was like Sophia. She had the dogs. She was really good, her stunts. I was impressed. I went to see the movie. They gave me the movie. I got what I wanted to see, and more. There was a lot of killing in it. They were on bridges, right? Synonymous with our growing in the underworld. You know, there's a lot of bridges and tunnels, right? A lot of pathways, passages, darkness, things that are not so clear. The storyline is not so clear. It just cuts off and you're like, what the blip? And he's like, what I noticed is we take on these things and don't even realize that we're possessed. We don't want to admit it. Or they say, crazy people don't know they're crazy. We don't want to admit that we have been indoctrinated, right? That we have been possessed with these programs, the domain, right? Demon. They have dominions in our mind. There's a lot of hallways and tunnels and pathways in the underworld, because they're in the underworld, they're not thinking in a space where you're not even involved in any of that ish. You want some? Give me some, right? I had to go see the movie. Gotta go see the fight. Do you need a little world star? Do you need something from that selection that we know is gonna corrupt, or you know, if we partake in it? And we all do it in some way. And that is what is coming into light, where we're able to make a choice, where not knowing it, like Phil Valentine said, it just seeps right in your brain and it goes through the unconscious mind. Okay, and they use symbolism and allegory and layers and stuff like that. So you're seeing Halle Berry, and you're seeing the dogs, and you're seeing the underworld, and you're seeing him, and you're seeing scenes that are synonymous with the Matrix. He's telling you it's the Matrix, synonymous with the underworld. Have you sold a little something for something because it feels good, because it's one of the norms, because they tell us we could have it? We're angry because they stop abortion instead of educating ourselves on how to plan for children better, how to prepare our lives better for children. to welcome our children in better. Isn't that part of awakening and growing up? Dang, snap. I mean, how can you wake up and grow if you're not moving from something into something? So unless we acknowledge where it was we came from and what it is, we can't go where it is we need to be. And that's part of being in the underworld and unconscious mind, is that ego and our hearts, like the space where we don't even want to admit fault. We want to blame it on everybody else, but they're putting these things on us with the media. That's why the Pope, he said something. He said, and it sounded funny. He said, anybody who's going to church on Sunday is going to be messed up, okay? And he said, now you got to know the backdrop story to that. You have to know astrology to even know what the Blippi's talking about, but they told people who were sitting in the pews to stay away from astrology, and that was evil. That's funny, and not so funny at all. I forget what you call that when something is two things in one thing. A double something. Anyway, he said that if you're watching the Legos movie, that you're going to hell and that your soul was sold to the devil. So what did he mean by that? He means that they know we're buying these programs. That's why the movie is big freaking business. We are actually taking it into ourselves. It's magic. The screen, everything about computers and the movie screen and that whole thing is magic. Is science. Okay? Is science of a lower kind because of the way that it's being used, but it could be, and it's also a higher science because of the way that it's being used. Hence, we are here right now. That's the pull. Like money, it can be, it's a tool. It depends on the intent of the user, right? So I'm looking at that movie and I'm also enjoying it, but I'm also seeing the disclosure. So I don't get the disclosure unless I see the movie, right? Although I can see my interpretation out here already. I don't know, it made it that much more fun looking at it from that angle too, right? So these are the choices that we make for many different things, right? But I'm aware and I take responsibility for starting to take more responsibility. That awakening. We're moving into betterment, right? Through the underworld. And there was things that I did in my life in the past that were very synonymous with being in the underworld. And in a very deep way. And we go through, there's many layers to this, you know? From that to some people just want a house and to raise their children and to be respectable and to leave the underworld behind. Others have another plateau, okay, where they tap into something else, and it's like you got to have the spirituality, you know what I'm saying? Not just the life or that's symbolic of having left the underworld, but to really, like, you know what I'm saying, get up out of here, like in here though, in different dimensions, and here to elevate. So there's different layers to this, right? And that's what I saw John Wick trying to get at. When the guy asked him at one point in the movie, he was supposed to go kill the guy in the hotel. What was that? I guess I just told you, right? Movie spoiler. And so the guy says, do you want to die as a hitman? Or do you want to die as a man trying to remember his wife and child, I think he said. Yeah. Do you want to die as a hitman, or do you want to die as a man trying to remember his wife and his dog or something like that? And he chose to Even though he had cut off his freaking finger and everything and made a deal with the devil, synonymous with the desert, he had to go see this dude that was like a sheik in the desert. They told him, go into the desert until he feels like he's on his last breath. And that when he is, that the man who sits over the head table, get this right, may or may not decide to come and get him. They say the devil is in the desert, right? You have to know the backdrop to the story. It's our story, right? The desert is a barren place. Who's holding back what? Why they're emulating us and we're emulating them, not even realizing what the blip that we're doing, that it's still us, right? The dogs and Sophia was synonymous. He wanted to get out of there. He had to go see the ferry boat man. Okay? He had to give, they had this coin. What do you give the ferry boat man? What do you give the person that has to give you passage in the underworld? You give them coin. There was a theme. Okay? And there were so many different layers, like there was the glass ceiling and right, the sheik and the desert and the devil allegory in there. The glass ceiling, the room that they were fighting in, they also reminded me of the Matrix, where now the other layer and dimension to this was that here we got Shern and we have the Vatican, and we know, those of us who study, about how like the cocaine cowboys and America's war on drugs, right? Like mischief and mayhem and the backdrop.
The world's happiest super cheetahs.
In the backdrop of this stuff, that there's a backstory, right? That we had to go research and find out. And they said that it was a conspiracy, but no, we find out that it isn't. It's something that's actually happening, right? But most of the people around you don't know what's going on and what's going on in the world around us, and that's why we call it the Matrix. And so while I noticed John Wick is killing these people in this movie in particular, I think it was a train station scene. But people are just, as soon as they're getting murdered, swept out of the way like nothing even happened. Like the everyday people in this movie seem like Sims. They don't notice nothing. They're like Sims in a computer. So the war is being fought. What? They say the real war will not be televised. So those of us really watching are each other that are already aware of certain dimensions and aspects of this. And as we're seeing some people be killed off, we're seeing other people be initiated into the awareness of more and more people each year waking up as the numbers get larger and larger with the deaths of people dying from heart attacks and mysterious illnesses and shootings and missing people. And you hear all these different things going on in the Matrix, right? I mean, who puts in the work for this stuff? For the body parts and the da-da-da-da-da-da, huh? For the girls missing and working and all kinds of stuff. That's the underworld, right? The cocaine cowboys, that's the underworld. Crooked cops, that's the underworld, right? Judges, doctors, all that's the underworld. All that is people ensnared and begotten by whatever idea, ism that got them in the situation that they're in. Some people just got in there because they were birthed into it. Some people got blackmailed. Some people are threatened. Well, that's a form of blackmail. But like, your legs, your arm, your life kind of thing. The underworld. Secrets, organizations, the underworld. The underworld is all around us. And they're the ones who are running this thing. They say that if you took away the dirty money from the USA, there would be no USA. Hence what's going on today with the whole money thing. And the fight between, look at Prohibition and how all that money was made from alcohol or whatever, and they got to enable them to be able to lobby for positions in government and to raise their children to go to prestigious colleges and stuff. All that had to be upheld by a certain standard, right? That we helped uphold within the matrix. So when they said, doesn't this look good? Don't you want that? We keep watching it and praising it, and it looked good. And even when we want our own form or interpretation of it, it's still a desire, and it was still feeding this black magic machine going through this dark screen. Dark screen, the hidden realms and spaces and tunnels in our minds, the elusiveness, right? Because ignorance is just not knowing. It's lack of knowledge. And enlightenment is, wisdom is the word, enlightenment, knowledge, which is light, it's a form of light. And we're watching the dark screen. And we're watching a form of divination. So we're watching them show us their interpretation of what they enjoy about culture, right? About themselves and us. Symbolically, we're watching them tell us about themselves and about ourselves. Amulet, the indicative of mood, present tense, right? To be. Who said that? Was that Shakespeare? To be or not to be. I am that I am. Excuse me. And I thought this was interesting. AMA, right? A water bucket that would come right after. Christians, early bucket, a water bucket, an early Christian church, which reminded me of the Aquarius water bucket. Age of Aquarius, synonymous with now. That reminded me of the Chaldeans and the Ba and the Ka and the vessel, right? These things tie in together. That reminded me of this other word, right? Came right after. AMABILIT, ambility, I believe. And it means, it says ambilitas is also, I think that's Spanish. Amadas? Amadas. It reminded me of you, Ingram, for some reason. And it means lovableness or love of God. So that AM is tying into spirit somehow, love of God, faithful lover. And when you start talking about Ba and Ka and Chaldeans and past history and Age of Aquarius, I just started thinking about Pan. What? The goat. A charm, amulet, something often worn around the neck as a remedy or protection against evil or mischief. Who was they hanging from trees? God. What? Jesus. What? History. When they knocked off the noses and used technology to shut off parts of the mind and enforce trauma and blotted out history so that we couldn't see who we were, sitting on top of gold ourselves, sitting on top of our unconscious, our past, ourselves, not even wanting to wake up to how wonderful or devious we were. So how can we change or move forward, stuck in a space and limbo, getting screwed by the king? What they call that? The right to F-U-C-K? That's a law that the king gave his troops in order to turn the populace into what he wanted as far as race, if there is one anymore. Now that we're all most mixed together with a whole bunch of stuff. If there is like a pure race. But there is an awakening, okay? So I thought that was really weird, right? Because they like to do dark magic. So look at the synonymous stuff. That was just a side note that I could not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it said that emulation had a deviousness to it they don't want you to know about. And it has rules. There's disclosure in movies. What? Life was like a box of chocolates. You never knew what you're going to get. And why did that line change? Was it Shern? Does time change? Was it just a computer era? I don't know. There's a lot of little tiny mishaps going on. That's what I'm aware of. Even if you do try to exclude one little thing in the matrix, there's a whole bunch of things that are wrong that make it add up, right? This is the layer 2, where you know that something is wrong. Because there shouldn't be so many little things wrong. You know what I'm saying? Pay attention to the little things. I appreciate the little things. Like knowing that emulations are an ardent desire for superiority arising from competition, rivalry, and personal conquest, involving usually envy and resentment, hence targeted individuals, human trafficking, trying to get your goods before you can even arrange your goods or find out how to use your goods, who to get with to, you know what I'm saying, to market your goods. They're shooting you with energy weapons and poisoning your. I've heard so many freaking stories lately about us being under attack. I'm glad we're waking up to the fact that they're attacking us. And it's not just mysterious deaths and stuff. This is the underworld that we're waking up to. Who's putting in that work, huh? So that reminded me of this movie, okay? Coming up out of certain situations and stuff like that in life. And the colors and stuff. You know, there was a lot of the reds and the blues. There was yellows. They really used the colors very well. They used the symbolism very well. Could tell there was a play on The Matrix. If you've seen The Matrix, there's certain scenes that reminded you of it very clearly. And when you add that to the fact that this whole money thing and the straw man and being property and 3/4% human and all the dirty deeds that have been being done when it comes to humans, well, a creator don't play that. You know what I'm saying? Those are things that people who've been infected, you know, been possessed, okay, that's the things that they do. Santos Bonacci talks about the paper balls that the Vatican has underneath the Vatican. They do dark magic. That's apparent, okay? It's done all the times. And one thing that used to always, you know, one thing that got me starting to search a lot more into sound and frequency was the bells. And the bell tolls what? I mean, that's off in a movie, but I mean, it's on the movie. It's part of the programming. There's bells mostly in any area. Like there's a package store on every corner. There's certain things that are synonymous. You're gonna hear them bells, and you're gonna hear them certain music during certain times of the year, and how music is used to tap in, just like the images, how music and images are used to tap into the unconscious mind. Okay. Um, Used to emulate us. They use amulets. Was that the amulet? Strange fruit? Because it said that an amulet is a charm, something often worn around the neck as a remedy or protection against evils or mischief. And if we see ourselves up there hanging from a tree, you sure enough ain't gonna make no moves against those people depicting you or even see that that's you anymore because it's trauma, right? You don't have a wonderful past. You're just a strange fruit on a tree. Synonymous with that now. Isn't that a charm? Isn't that charming? Isn't that exclusive? As an exclusion, as an exclusive. These are metaphors and allegory, wordplay, glamour for grammar. The grimoire is the people who set this language in place in a counterproductive manner, and these images in place in a counterproductive way. And they give you disclosure, but then it's up to you to be wise enough to be able to use tools, spiritual tools that'll come your way if you have the proper intention. And those are fabulous teachers that'll give you some insight, spiritual insight. Excuse me. So, John Wick III. During the recognition of his movie, and I forget exactly what platform, but just kind of like how they put the stars in Hollywood on the ground, but only it was for China or an Asian cinematic platform. He did it 3 times. He started over 3 times. Now you know this man's been in plenty of movies where they've used occult symbolism, so I wouldn't, and then he's a martial artist too. I wouldn't suspect that he was as naive as some people might believe that he is. And I'm looking at the symbology, and it's John Wick 3. It's emulating the Matrix. There's a lot of dimensions to this flick, right? There's a lot of levels to this ish. Watch out for the shiny ish. And I'm seeing him kneel down and write his name in the cement 3 different times before he left it. You and yours, this is Siren Bodhisattva Medicine, and we're talking about the John Wick flick part 3 again. We're talking about allegories and metaphors. We went over this in part 1 yesterday. The sun of the sun. There'd be the sun in the sky, the astrological part. The sun they call Jesus or Jesus. And then there's Sunday. That falls underneath that sign. That's allegory, right? It's also embedding. So if they give you a metaphor, I'm using these symbols, right? And I'm using them in a way, a figure of speech in which one thing is likened to another, different thing, by being spoken of as if it were that of another. So when I say Sunday, the backdrop of that story and that metaphor is that I know that it's attached to these other objects. And that's part of the knowing part. Now, I just thought this was really funny when I was looking at the word amulet. I am, right? You know, the am part, meaning in the dictionary, I am that I am. okay? Or amulet. Talk about the cosine. Amulet. Amulet. I'ma let you. It's a cosine. Amulet. An amulet in a dictionary was a charm, something often worn around the neck as a remedy or protection against evils or mischief. Okay? This picture up here that I have, in the land of the blind, they say the one-eyed man is king. So the two-eyed man would probably be considered God, right? That's just a different perspective. So we have amulet and we have emulate. And that's where we were, where I was talking about how the films are emulating something when we get the disclosure that there's a story and there's a backdrop. And so there's many layers to this, right? And so you would have to know the story, his story. You would have to know the story in order to attach it to the metaphors, to be able to use the allegories. And there's different layers and depths to it. Hence, here we go with John Wick 3. Okay? We're in the 3D. This is a message. It's a message to everybody because that's how they do disclosure. Okay? It's, if all the world's a play, then we're mere actors on the stage, is something that was said by Shakespeare, one of the people who helped orchestrate and write the script, part of the script for this Matrix. Okay? Now, the metaphor, like I said, is symbology with a story behind it. So here in John Wick, we have the underworld theme. It's a script synonymous with the Matrix. And the computer takes scripts, and we look at this as a holographic situation, right? So we have in the computer script and domains, which are demons, okay? Energy that's taken from dark matter energy, pure knowledge or rays of light. Information is information. It's just the package that it's in and the way that it's able to interface with the world around it via, we are the vehicles to interface with any and all energy that we come into contact with. And so whether it's energy that's organic from in an organic carbon-based vehicle, right? Or energy that's placed inside of a computer, we still have a script to be able to interface with it. So that's where the John Wick theme in this movie was, he's in his black and white and he's this man and he's got the script. He's an assassin. That's his program. But there was something in his program where he wanted more and he had a mate. So there's the different dimensions, right? To be or not to be a husband. And that was taken away from him. So they had his dog. And then they tried to take that away from him. And it pretty much got him really angry because what's the assassin's story, right? You have to know the story. Assassins just want a place in the end to be at peace where they can witness law. His wife, symbolic of a womb space, symbolic of Maya, symbolic of balance, symbolic of that place where you can experience life, right? So Halle Berry played a friend in this movie who her character was synonymous with like Sophia. She was dressed in gold and she had these dogs. And I noticed what they've been doing with this character. For instance, they had Halle Berry in that movie called Monster Ball. So they take her character in order to trigger things in other women visually, like I said. Okay, so we roll the dice. We roll the dice. These pictures are from the movie. In the underworld, we give the ferry boat man, or we give coin for passage. So these are the some symbology that's being used, but there's deeper meaning to this. Okay? We have, as far as the disclosure, different fractions fighting for power, fighting for control and dominion, control of the matrix. Okay? And then we have watchers. And we have we just have different fractions. Okay? There's more than just one type of being here, knowing what's going on. But they pretty much have a seat in the underworld. And that's where that saying that the war will not be televised is coming in, because the people who don't know what's going on are like Sims in a computer. It's like they don't even matter when it comes to the underworld, and where the real rules and stuff to run the matrix are being played. Okay? So we're following these other rules that are a sim to a computer program to be like extras in this play, when they're actually participating. There's people participating, but they've usually paid a price to have the lights on or move about within the underworld. You have to pay some coin or flesh, or you're gonna pay some years for the lesson that you learn, for the time that you spent indulging. Here we go again with symbolism that's synonymous with the underworld as elevators. There was a lot in this movie. There was like I said before, hallways and bridges and tunnels. Okay, narrow corridors, and the colors and the symbolism all very much synonymous with the underworld. But there was also times where I saw things that looked like gears and stuff that reminded me of the Matrix. Here we have the glass room and the mirror. We're going to get to that. I'm just going to let it hover there for a moment. Let's go over some of the characters that were in this movie in a deeper way, so that I can show you some of the ways that they embed this symbolism, where they use the metaphor and allegory, which, using the mirror magic of the movies, works like an amulet. So for them, when they emulate us, or we're looking at them, it's like it's definitely some serious magic. Oh, now the blind spot would be, in this feeding frenzy, that the vampire can't see themselves, right, in the mirrors. So when we look at through the movies, when we're sucking, when we're taking and not putting back, as far as the consciousness grid is concerned, it's just tapping in. And the messages are going straight into our brain, and we're not contributing any insight. We're just accepting the program. And they say, let's just go through some sayings here real quick. Crazy people don't know that they're crazy. Perhaps because in order to get well, you have to know you're sick. Huh? Yeah, because you can't heal if you can't admit. You can't account if you can't admit that you have depth, right? If you can't admit it, you failed. And so that leads to the wounded healer theme, who admits to the hurt and then eats the pain. That's the snake that eats itself space where we're in right now. And it's the only thing that can overcome this situation. To transcend the darkness is to eat the darkness, to transcend basically the flaws of self, so they can have a different resonant frequency. It's transference of something beyond being counterproductive. Okay, that's what I was getting. Now, some of the characters and things that they were doing was marriage. Okay, now I was talking about Halle Berry and some of the ways that they use the symbolism. And in this movie, she was, like I said, Sophia, and she had the dogs, and it was like she represents balance and the womb space defined by woman. Okay, now the backdrop to that story is occult symbolism, and that's what I want to get into now. There was a scene in a movie where the ring, right? And um, the ring was synonymous with a marriage or the mirage, right? We're in love with the mirage. It's a marriage, it's a dance. And this mirrored room, this is the mirrored room, the glass room from the movie. And they're fighting in there. Now, mind you, another layer, there's different dimensions to this. So I'm like uh, dropping these other layers in here, okay? Inserts. The Masons are having an internal uh, rearranging, let's just say. Now, I believe this is going on for a while. Now, there's different fractions of the Masons, hence, when I've done research, like the Black Masons versus the Templars or White Masons, just look at the distribution of power and how certain knowledge has been held back, like the Vatican having all these books and stuff like that still in their catacombs and things like that. Okay? So that's an off balance when it comes to dealing with occult symbolism and magic and secrets and insights, right? To hold something back from a whole group of people when you're, all supposed to be a part of this thing, that shows you the tier right there. Now the tier is just being changed. I don't even really want to go into all that stuff, but their thing is being rearranged. And it's all about economy, right? America, United States as a company, and it goes into all the things that we weren't looking at in this mirage, in this matrix, right? Regarding the straw man and economics and the way economics is used to, they use behavioral modification in a way where, like Marxism, you can use the behavior of the person in order to maximize the production of goods. By studying the different aspects of human personality and needs and desires and the way our brains function and stuff, you can hit a situation up from different angles in order to maximize your buying capacity. Okay? And that's what they do when they study the science and look for the hot spots, right? When they keep certain knowledges away from a certain population and keep them like niggers ignorant in the dark. That's symbolism and allegory. These are layers, okay? So we have this mirage that we're in a marriage and a dance with. And so this, I looked at John Wick as symbolic, these different layers. It was symbolic of the different layers. One is the matrix is real, and built on it. It's built on the underworld, okay? So the underworld is real, and the matrix is real and built on the underworld. And the fact that they're dealing with spirits, and these are demons or demonic spirits that lead into the embedding and encoding. When you look at the matrix, this is all so much depth that you have to have the intellect and mentality to be able to figure out the backstory, right? The different layers work like a symbolism, like an amulet in your mind. Because I was going over that yesterday, right? Like the energy never dies, it only transfers, and we're just seeing things, the same image look differently, and therefore it plays out. We're able to access different parts of it within our minds. Okay? Hence the person that looks at the zodiac on a paper looks at the zodiac interacting with the human, interfacing with humans from up above, right? And the person that can take that same zodiac and stick a pole in the ground and imagine that there's celestial bodies surrounding it and try to access those energies from a different space from within inside themselves, realizing that they're a part of a fractal. To do that, to know that, hope I'm not losing you. You have to know the backstory, and that's why it's important to control the narrative. And that's why these movies and the mirage of these movies is so freaking important. So in this movie, you saw John Wick's awakening to the allegiance. We saw us awakening to the allegiance, basically, okay, as part of this disclosure. We had revelations in the fallen angles, the fallen angles, the 911 theme, right? We had the biblical confirmation. We have images synonymous with the Matrix, not just the images, but John Wick, Keanu Reeves himself. And we have Halle Berry. No, she wasn't in the Matrix. That was we have Lawrence Fishburne, and there were others too that were also the Matrix movies that showed up in John Wick 3 or in the John Wick movies in general. So it's a warning, as in resonating frequency 911, regarding commerce, money, war, and mayhem. The war will not be televised. What? I said, the ordinary people are like Sims because they're not informed. And that's part of the awakening and the change of guard and the flip-flop of the consciousness within this grid, that it's more than what people thought it is. And it's also speaking, you have to know the backdrop story, but it's making confirmation in regards to the allegiances. So sound the alarm. The phones are ringing, right? Some movies that I thought gave some pretty interesting disclosure was the movie about the sim and the script and the different characters, right? And this play and this Matrix was the movie Glass, True Blood, Heroes, the movie The Purge and Get Out, and The Matrix and The Terminator and Heroes, and even Resident Evil in regards to that umbrella, the umbrella, a sign of protection, a divine protection. And now we have people competing for the power within the Matrix. But those people need to take heed to the real authority and the power of the Creator, okay? And that's those things that no matter what they build, they have to extract these raw materials from the Creator. Fire, water, earth, air, and ether. Make all these different materials that would even make my computer. It comes from out of the womb space. And so they extract it from the earth. You can't even breathe to move your muscle or push a button or sign your name to initiate any kind of law or whatever without breathing or moving or using the resources of this planetary system. And you can try to take away some of the electrical magnetism by removing the, side note, minerals and crystals and gold and all the things from the earth, trying to control those things which make it magnetic and give us the inner authority and power because they know certain sciences and stuff. But they can't be it. They can only try to retract, and that's where it's part of the definition of emulate, because the Creator said in the Bible, it says, "You have stolen my copper and my gold," right? His jewels. Hitler was talking about the jewels. And we have the Jew-ish, and I went over that in a video before. The ish. The ish is not the dish. that you want. Okay, so we go into this umbrella, and anybody not under the umbrella, right? It depends on the way you look at it. The Walking Dead. Now here you go with the different fractions with this marriage, right? Is he living or is he dead? And what fraction is he in? If he's a Mason, if he's a killer, if he's bought, if he's a bought soldier, if he's paid, if he's a demon, if he's already sold his soul to the devil, to the sheik, right? Then he belongs to a family and he has allegiances. And they want him to remember his allegiances. And he wanted them at certain points to remember their allegiances. So he was under a particular umbrella until he wasn't anymore. And then when he went to the sheik, he basically had to make a decision, and he cut off his ring finger. So he was giving up the life that he had in the living with his wife, synonymous with God, with balancing out that for an assassin, the place you call home, right? Where you can find life, where things make sense. The real space, according to occult systems, the real place that is the judge is the woman. The womb space, the space of the waters is the divination, the space of divination. Okay, and so you had Halle Berry, who we saw at one time play in the movie The Monster Ball, playing the character that was synonymous with a bitch, but the backdrop of the story, she may be to those that spiritual energy may be to those people who were in authority, right? When it's coming into the path to make correction. If you look at the Mayat energy, the ancient female energy, and didn't move now, if that's balance, and you're talking about like an Asar energy, it moves, right? There's beauty and love, and the top of the pyramid, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay, so all this was in there, and then the balance was that she moved as three. You know, her two dogs and her, and the embedding in that is that they say a woman is a bitch, well, especially if she gets angry, right? And then instead of giving, I mean, there was um, respect to this character, but in your brain, you're going to make an equation to other characters that you've seen her play. Okay, just like we have with Keanu Reeves. Okay, and that's what it does. It builds webs and tunnels and spaces within the confines of our minds, and we take these programs, and little girls want to be Halle Berry. They want to be this and they want to be that. We want to be Keanu Reeves. We want to be, you know what I'm saying? We want to take part in the Matrix, and that's why this movie was so powerful. The Terminator and the Matrix movies that Sophia Stewart's creative energy contributed to. Okay? And the female womb space of creativity and judgment, all those things that come from out of the womb space, right? We choose what we want and what we don't want by genetics and by real spirit. Hence, the DNA of the mother will actually pop out what it is that she really needs or she wanted to be, regardless. The Djed, the real spiritual energies, and those doing the divination to decide what is allowed upon the planet comes through the womb space of the woman, and energy never dies, it only transfers. Is abortion okay? If higher authorities deem that those bodies be so, is there an opportunity to say, you know what, spirit, I recognize that all is self, and I'm going to change that thinking within me and realize that I made error, because the wounded healer can't heal if he doesn't admit or she doesn't admit that she's wounded. So we have a clear allegiance with demons in this movie, what you wanted to correct He just wanted that space with his wife that he could call home. And the depths of that I already went into about women. But you would have to know the backdrop of our Earth history, right? The ET history, about Sophia, about the Sibyls, about matriarchism, and then look at what um, the Church or the Vatican and their soldiers, their army, has done. So they have a Lord, and we have a Creator also. These words kind of trip me up, so that's why it's intention that's the deciding factor, because our Creator really doesn't care so much about nitpicking about some of the things that we be tripping over. It's all in the heart and can be read. This energy, right, is not playing, and it can only be held back for so long, and that's why they took so much time. Another thing synonymous with this movie is Sherm and the colors, and uh, they say destroyed by a fire. Could that mean this 5G Wi-Fi energy? See, if this is commerce and it's world commerce being flown through this area, and this area needs to be used somehow as a part of the world grid, then maybe that fire isn't the kind of fire that we thought it was. Maybe that kind of fire is a spiritual fire, or the kind of fire that can be defined through 5G and through the purging energy that the sun is doing right now. There's different kinds of fire, purging energies and fires that are going on right now. If you know how to look at energies, and you can see within this program. Okay. So they have sons that are like Sims. And John Wick was basically like a soldier, an assassin program running. And he wanted to get off of the script, off of that program, you know? And so he fell, but he fell, and he fell, and there was a price to pay. He went through their glass ceiling, you know, of their laws, their internal laws and struggles that they have, like a fallen angel, right? But he wanted to do something not necessarily good or wonderful for anybody else, but he wanted to taste what it is that the ordinary person has. That seemed like a sim in there, don't you think? But he couldn't be oblivious anymore because he already partook in the underworld. So, a funny thing, another aspect of the characters in regards to symbology and metaphor was the guy Zero. Zero wanted to reflect that. There you go, exactly, perfect example of what I was speaking of when Zero wanted to be Neo. So Neo as in John Wick being synonymous with the Neo character, right? And them in the glass room and certain scenes pretty much reminding you of Matrix, parts of the Matrix movie, the coloring and even the staging and stuff. So Neo means one, okay? Even the words, if you jumble, it's jambalaya, like riddle me this, right? And Zero doesn't know that he defines himself, because Zero means all. So this guy was capable of so many things, but he was fixated on this one thing, all right? And many of them, here's the program, they wanted to be the best assassin, all right? They wanted to be the assassin. They wanted to be the big kahuna. Let me see if I can get rid of these. So they rolled that dice. That's big sport right there. They rolled that dice and took the risk to die just to be able to roll with the big guy. So, you know what I'm saying? He was a rite of passage. Everybody heard about this dude. All the killers wanted to emulate John Wick. And that's why the Sheik said, I never saw a man fight so hard to get back to where he started from. And so He leaves his mirage, his illusion that he can return to the memory just of being with his wife and being calm and being an ordinary person. What? To be in service of the sheik again, of the high table, as the assassin is a prized possession. Hmm? A dog with a dog. Layers. A paid assassin. And so you have those layers in your, when it was coming to the disclosure of people right now, of their internal struggle and warfare. How many generations of people? You have the chess, you know, all the world's a stage, and you have the thing, how the Masons uses symbology of chess when moves made and stuff like that within this matrix. So it's like he was letting us know. Now, on another aspect, when you're studying the occult systems and stuff, and you start to see what they did with the movies and stuff, you see, did these Hollywood people sell their soul? Or these musicians and these Hollywood people, right? They're familiar, even in using their art, more than the average bear in regards to occult symbolism and stuff, and a lot of the hidden world symbology and stuff, and even the high demand for their images and stuff now that they're on screen to be desired from someone who feels like they want to be them or want to spend time with them. I heard that there's also, clones being rented out and stuff for service, if you know what I mean. So remember Highlander? Also, there can only be one kind of thing when it comes to these soldiers. Now notice they sold themselves to the underworld, and another part of this movie is I realized that it didn't seem like they were dying. You know what I'm saying? All those cuts and scrapes, they weren't really dying, and the people like didn't see anything when they were dropping. There was a scene, I think they were in a train station, where by the time they dropped, there was another team to sweep it away, and it reminded me of the movies where they show the Secret Service and stuff, Black Ops. Now here's the layers where the Hollywood people, they're at service to the Masons, whether they know it or not, by feeding the program the images, to feeding the program to society. Helping to keep a position and a balance within the consciousness grid. And this place we call a matrix, what's run. We are the floaters for the program. And so in this movie, you saw the chess pieces. There was even the black and white floor and different parts. And you also, where they do the embedding and the layering, and they use more than one dimension of symbology and allegory or metaphor. So they keep it going. When you're watching a movie, you have many of these different layers and stuff happening in front of us without us realizing it. Okay, and we are internalizing it. So John Wick is burning his candle at both ends. What? And so the hotel guy, right? This dude here. The hotel guy. Gee, I hope you can see what I see. Sometimes I'm just enjoying myself going along and I have such a good session with you, and then I realize I've used the technology and you're not even there. So hopefully that's not happening right now and you're actually with me watching. What, family? I hope so. Okay, so this dude right here uh, has some parallels with the architect in the Matrix movie with his character, right? And the different dimensions where, you know, he was in this hidden realm and a glass room being kind of like a, or, you know, like the glass ceiling falling, regardless of whether it's knowledge or even those within the underworld waking up. I was in the underworld and we're in different dimensions on the underworld and we're waking up. Notice how that glass room had different layers. It had stairs. Okay? There's a staircase in the glass room. Is there an elevator in that bad boy too? What? Is there? Uh, okay. See a little red. Okay. The scene is hot. It's primal. Do you see the embedding? Root. That's the only color you see triggering another dimension of your psyche. Okay? This symbology triggers. And it's straight through the dome into the unconscious mind because it's subliminal. Okay? Energy never dies, it only transforms. And so the images are there, like the pole in the ground and rotating around the days of the week, 365 days of the year. Okay? It's a holograph in the brain, a picture that does different things, but if we're not aware of it, it takes on different dimensions, just like characters and stuff. Like um, the characters that were used, for instance, like I described Shakespeare, where he used the different astrological combinations to depict characters because they triggered, because it's the science of triggering the empathy and the connection within the person that's watching. It's a way to connect that, to anchor that in. So, in regards to the woman thing, um, street justice, John Wick, the underworld, right? Um, you could get with this and you could get with that theme. He was under a particular umbrella. Um, so when the high table came through to make correction, you had the adjudicator. And the adjudicator came through like mama. She made corrections. See? The balance came through. Now, Halle Berry was playing a character that was pretty much binary also, although she was mostly femme. She was very athletic and she had the dogs, which tripled her power, which made her a masculine energy because it was about war and fighting and protection. But the females we all have male and female energy. But the adjudicator came with the power of the house and had the umbrella, which is also symbolic of being the hand of the house, right? And with like the Vatican kind of thing, angel kind of energy, right? Where she was like, yeah, like an angel, you know. She was bringing the balance in, and when she showed up, she was like mama, and she whooped that behind. Okay, she initiated the underworld laws, and she gave that spanking. But she's not higher law. She was their higher law in regards to the underworld that's defying or excusing or ignoring or just made an agreement to, you know what I'm saying, dip their feet into things that is known biblically, right, or spiritually would defy the universal laws or the principles of our true nature or a true creator. So these demons are actually like spiritual energies that attach themselves to us and feed off of us is parasitic. It's vampiric. These energies are the energies that we've been fighting off. That is part of the war of this planet. Okay, and when we take part in them to different degrees, just like the hierarchy of the Masonic rule, there's different layers and dimensions to the demons. There's higher demons and lower demons, and higher angels and lower angels, or just say there's different aspects or jobs and things for them to initiate. You know what I'm saying? Different functions. So we're looking at higher, lower. Another term would be just different functions. Okay. Different principles, different attributes. Like you get the backdrop to the story when you look at the Book of Solomon, or you look at the book of their emerald tablets, the Book of Thor. Okay. So the sheik over the high table sits at the gate. All this is underworld terminology. There were some twins in this movie. The twins in this movie wanted to fight him. Thank you. Okay. The twins in this movie wanted to fight him because it was like that Highlander game, right? He was their prized possession, John Wick. And the Matrix. Yeah. Here we go with some play on word stuff. Remember that part of the amulet thing was to be able to mix, match, and jumble words? Well, you know how April, the backdrop to April Fools is April 1st is actually how they played around with the dates and stuff, because that's important, because like I said, it's like this hologram in our minds that we're flipping around when we say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? And we do the equinoxes and the holidays and stuff like that. It's a clock in our minds, and energy is able to be tapped into whether we know it or not. So we have April Fools. Some of us know the backdrop, right, to this story for this metaphor, symbolic under April Fools. Now, what about Matrix? The Matrix, Matrix. Pay attention to the words that our ancestors were very funny in the way that they used wordplay, grammar, and glamour. There's nothing new under the sun, only different combinations, right, of it and portions of it that were given and able to distribute according to the will of our creator, or we might self-will away from the all is self theme and try to get something for ourselves and end up in a little bit of a thing, right? So the ring, it was an offering, okay? And it was like this to be or not to be theme. And he was like, I am what I am. And he was an assassin who longed for peace, you know? AM, he was their prized possession, like an amulet. But he's emulating us. Just us was there, just us under their umbrella. These are words synonymous with the word play, and I'm showing you how that is used. Okay? Just us, symbolic of Mayat, symbolic of law, symbolic of Allah, and synonymous with consciousness, illusion, or choice, is what we see in this movie. The Sheik was equivalent to God. God equivalent to female, because she is the place where things divinate from, where at the gate, where her womb space can be used for higher decision, right? Hence the trade, right? Of his finger, the ring, and his finger for his reinitiation back to serve. he who sits over the high table, synonymous with who sits at the gate in the underworld. Now we know, take the backdrop of the story, of his story, of planetary ET extraterrestrial history with Area 51 and our president and with that the Watergate dudes and stuff like that, you know, during that time, Area 51. Was it 1940s or 50s? Right before I was born, in the 60s, the late 60s, 69. So at the event, oh, wait a second. The adjudicator, the procurer, the one who gives balance, the one who gave judgment, who was always also assessing the environment, right? And she brought the law. She brought the balance. She was binary. She kept the balance in the matrix, right? Binary is a computer term that this woman was using. So they also use disclosure in there. And you notice how a lot of these were being used as vessels for beings. And we choose, due to cosign, through the program that we initiate, aware or unaware. It's better to be aware and take accountability. At least you can drive your vehicle better or make better alliances, right? And so they're referring to the binary adjudicator as like the nameless one. It's not a he or a she. So that reminds you, and it's the hand or the voice of he who sits over the high table. And we know there's been demonic allegiances made, which is the real nature of this 3D, right? The different dimensions are, there's many levels to this. And the matrix is real on many levels. Now, do you know that some of the Hollywood stars are able to go and see the top secret stuff that they're keeping from the general public that's in Antarctica? And see me to how they are being used to initiate a lot of the occult systems agendas, right? And Masonic agendas to make them feel special, to make, you know what I'm saying, you're part of the family underneath that umbrella. It falls under like being a government agent or worker because you're initiating their protocols for the public, right? So she's the nameless one, this adjudicator. And she brings in the law and she assesses for the high table. One thing I noticed that was defining her hand of God from the hand of our creator was the fact that she was egotistical. There was a lot of pride under that umbrella. Like when she was sitting down in the room and she made the phone call, when she realized they were getting their butt whooped, she didn't really blink an eye, but it was aggravating her because she wasn't used to waiting too long to be able to gloat, stand there with her phone and say, all right, now what you gonna do? So one of the things that people have said, right, was I served and I shall always serve. And they took their lickings because there wasn't any way to run away from the high table. That sounds a lot like the British thing, you know, that that house falls wherever there's a shadow. You know what I'm saying? You can't run from the underworld if they really want you. You know what I'm saying? That you couldn't run if you didn't have favor somewhere. And the only way to have favor, if you look at it right now during this time of enlightenment, during this spiritual warfare, is if you're covered. Somehow they're really working with dark magic and demons and sacrifices and all kinds of stuff. They're really working with that energy. They're not playing. Whether we believe in it or not, it's actually something that's being used. And that was something they wanted us to see in the movie. There's a lot of symbolism with, you know, that movie also, that he was in with Devil's Advocate. Okay? Devil's Advocate. You know, that was feeding into the ego. It's given, like, the disclosure is given. I think maybe, you know, if an artist is in there, like, it's an opportunity to be able to give a heads up. Part of the rules is that you have to give a heads up, but the weird part is that people have to be educated or knowledgeable enough to know what the heads up is that they're actually seeing. So under this umbrella, we saw favor. And another thing that it reminded me of, this just want to show a couple of pictures. Yeah. It's real happening. I have a couple more things to show you, and I'm going to end this. Oh yeah, the ring finger was synonymous with affection. The actual ring finger.